by the SEC and FINRA, and obviously a very important aspect. But you could also leverage your customer statement to communicate. Different ways you can communicate with your customer statement is that most customer statements have electronic messaging. You should begin communicating that to your customer. You could put in inserts. You can sit with your tax people, or you can go to an outside tax attorney to write it for you and start inserting material that customers can begin to understand, what this means on their 1099 forms in the future. And there's different ways of communicating. That's just one way. Other ways is, obviously, like online broker firms, send a lot of emails. They have their website, and internal communications is very important. Have you spoken to your margin department, your P&S department, all the other areas within operations that should be part of your project team to make sure that they understand what the rules are. So the margin department, I mean, typically, a lot of firms have the ACATs as part of the margin department. So obviously, they need to understand what this means relative to the CBRS, how to sign up for CBRS, etc. So you have to get the key personnel involved in the project team. Those people in the operations area should be doing user acceptance testing, because it's not only about the tax reporting department within operations. Is everybody's involved, from the tax department, technology, and all the business units. So everyone has different business units. There's wealth management, and there's the prime broker division, and each one of those business units communicates in their own way. The prime broker unit, for example, may say, I have a lot of personal interaction with my clients. I face off with them. Just educate me, and I'll communicate it to them. So it's important to speak to your business unit. So you collectively, between your marketing department, your business units, to determine what's the best game plan for your organization. There isn't one set game plan. It really depends on your organization, your culture, and the type of clients you have. If you're an institutional firm, you're a retail firm, you're an online firm. And so there isn't one stock answer. These are just recommendations. And the educational material, and I just want to talk about that, that's very important. So it's one thing to you can have train people, so you can have a training manual, you can give on-the-job training. The other thing that's important is that there's a regulatory document called written supervisory procedures. It certainly should have written workflow procedures. If the IRS comes in and everyone wants you, one of the first things that they'll ask you for is, let me see your procedures, let me see your documentation. If you say, I have it all in my head, I know it. So they know they have to, right then and there, the red flags go up, and they may stick around a little longer. And so if you have good documentation that could be referenced by numerous people, having written workflow procedures, having written supervisory procedures, training manuals, that goes a long way. So as operations people, you really have to think very broadly. You're not interpreting the tax law. You have your tax department. You have technology people. And so it's very important that you speak also to your service providers, just getting back to what we spoke about before. How are they going to talk to each other? That's very important, the back and forth. And how are you going to do it? For example, just going back, we had let's say something that was reclassed to return of capital. Are you going to pass it to your basis system? Is the basis system going to reduce the cost, and then are you going to pass it back to your 1099 vendor? You kind of have to map it all out in a workflow and see if it makes sense. And I think that's about it.
Marty had mentioned return of capital. I think what's interesting is if we go back only a few days ago, PriceSmart announced that they had a return of capital on their 2008 dividend distributions, and they reported it as a qualified dividend in 2008. Now a portion of it is return of capital. But what also is interesting is that they reallocated their 2009 distribution, and they made their return on capital a little greater, but it was only 1.44%. So now think about this. All the adjusting that would have to take place going back, for example, 2008 and 2009, 1.44%. There's no de minimis amount on return of capital, for cost basis, and there's no time element. So I would think that you're going to be stuck with making these adjustments that are going to end for 2009 may end up to be pennies. And if anybody wants a copy of the announcement that took place, I did make, believe it or not, I made sufficient copies for this room.
I've got a couple of questions, and I'll see if anyone wants to ask any questions. Actually, Marty, since you were standing, let me ask you the first one. A few of us mentioned S-Corps and the challenges around the S-Corps, and you talked about in new accounts. What about existing accounts? Do you have any idea, any suggestions?
Right, and these are business decisions, so you should start perhaps working on, like one of the ideas that we're doing is a remediation. So you have all these old grandfathered accounts that were opened in the 80s and in the 90s, maybe even earlier than that. And you work with your marketing area, different business units, so they're on board with it. You always want to get their buy-in. And then you have to do perhaps a mass mailing with, pay for the postage, postage return paid. So it gives them a little bit of an incentive. The disadvantage is they may put another stuff in there because they see free postage, but I'm sure you can deal with that. So that's one thing that we're looking at is coming out with a mass mailing. So it's basically drafting up a well put together letter with a mass mailing asking them to do two things. One is if they're a corporation that sign W-9, if it's an S corporation, you still want the W-9 identified. In addition to that, if you have a combined W-9 form, which a lot of brokerage firms have within the new account opening, so when say a cash and margin customer opens up an account, they typically have to sign a customer agreement. Then that agreement, in this day and age, most firms have the W-9 incorporated into that W-9. I'm about to say you got to be real careful with this. That you don't want to mess too much with the W-9 because you could be altering to the point where it's not valid. But if the IRS doesn't, come up with something for S corporations, perhaps within your customer agreement, or you have all your other legalese, you could work with your tax and legal folks to draft up some language on an ongoing basis where they're basically certifying because they have to sign it to the fact that they're an S corporation.
Thanks. Steve, I've got a question for you, because we were talking about this earlier today with the foreign mutual funds.
Oh, foreign mutual funds.